Welcome back, everyone, to Political Connections. After the governor took a victory lap in his State of the State address today, his loudest critics, though, now, Ybeth, are pushing back.
Yeah, we met with one of them, Anna Eskamani, Democrat from Orlando. She was in chambers, and we caught up with her in her office, and we talked about a myriad of things. We talked about abortion in Florida. We talked about education dollars, and also about a race that's happening way down the road in 2027, but it's a big talker right now. He said Florida is #1 in education freedom. What do you read into that?
I mean, what even defines education freedom?
The ban of books.
Right. It's just so
school
many
choice, which some families, especially those with special needs, say, you know what, we want to be able to have our kiddos have an option to go to a certain school and get some sort of financial help for that.
Even for our families who have decided to use a voucher to go to private school, they're facing a lot of struggles right now. Our office has been flooded with families that can't get their reimbursements in, are struggling with transportation issues. So that's the frustrating part, is even for families that, you know, politically align with the governor on some issues, they're struggling right now. And I think that's what happens when you have an absent governor, someone who's more focused on running for president in Iowa than he is on addressing these systematic problems we have in our state.
It's interesting that you point to the reimbursement, because some families who are watching right now, we're being seen across the I-4 corridor. It doesn't matter where you live, this impacts so many families. Somebody has to pay for that school up front, and then you should be getting reimbursed. But now we are hearing from families that months are going by. And they're not getting them. So is there any improvement in that you're hearing about?
Not at this time. I mean, our office has been flooded with these cases, and we will automatically contact Step Up for Students, which is the main organization that processes it, for a response. But in the statute, there really hasn't been improvements made. In fact, the statute's actually kind of loosened some of the timeline requirements for Step Up to meet, and I do think we need to tighten these requirements and ensure that families are not waiting months to get an answer and get a reimbursement.
Florida Abortion Initiative, the big talker, the number of signatures to get it on the ballot. You have been a huge proponent of giving women liberties over their bodies. But what do you feel needs to be done once it gets to the ballot? What's the message?
Well, first of all, the initiative, Floridians Protecting Freedom, has been incredibly bipartisan. In fact, more than 150,000 Republicans have signed on to this petition. And though we've made a huge milestone in collecting what was needed to get to the ballot, we still have the Supreme Court review on February 7th. So things are still uncertain, but thinking in the future, assuming we make this and we get that 60% threshold, this legislature is going to be responsible for changing statute to reflect the ballot initiative, the new constitutional amendment. And I am very concerned, just based on the attitude in the legislature towards these issues, where we have a total abortion ban that has been filed this year, that the legislature is going to continue to drag their feet and make even implementation of a successful ballot initiative difficult. So we need to be ready in 2025 for the chance that could happen.
So how do you store full abortion rights for your constituents? Because there's the 15-week, then it's a 6-week, but that's pending in the courts.
Well, the ballot initiative language speaks to a viability restriction. So that would restore Florida to what we were before the 15-week ban. So for the last 10, 11 years, Florida was a viability state. So most providers will define that between 22 to 24 weeks of gestation. Remember, 90% plus of abortion services are in that first trimester, so these are going to be some of those really difficult and rare circumstances when it comes to a wanted pregnancy and someone being faced with a fetal diagnosis or abnormality and so forth. And so we need to respect doctors and make those private decisions, and our hope is that we just restore things to what it once was before.
Let's talk a little bit more about any kind of transportation dollars funding. What are you guys working on where you can get maybe more federal dollars?
100%. I mean, I'm committed to bringing every federal dollar back down to Florida. That has been in conflict with the governor, who has rejected some dollars in the recent months.
But part of his argument is he's rejecting some of this money is because they give it to you up front, but at some point the state has to start paying for some of it, and he says that it's just not sustainable.
I think some of the concerns I've heard is that some of the dollars have requirements around, for example, carbon emissions and things like that. So my understanding is that our secretary has rejected some of these dollars because he feels like there's strings attached, or to your point, maybe there's some sort of state buy-in. I do think that the cost-benefit analysis is going to be in our favor. And at the end of the day, these are our taxpayer dollars that we want back to the state of Florida. With that said, we have the Sunshine Corridor. That is a big focus for us in Central Florida. There's been town halls hosted to get this right. And that is going to be a partnership with all levels of government and private sector as well. As Brightline is a private company, Sunrail is going to be public. But in Orange County, we have a deficit when it comes to funding transportation, which is why I've always been big on loosening the tourism development tax, bringing a tourism impact tax into the area. We have to identify additional sources of long-term revenue.
Any updates on, speaking of money that has strings attached, federal money coming to Florida that's got strings attached, on expanding Medicaid? The last time you and I sat in this office, during the last legislative session, we spoke about a local mom whose son has since passed away. It was a very compelling story, and some of the services she was not able to get for her son in the end-of-life care. And that expansion of Medicaid would have provided. Any new information on that?
So it's interesting you asked that question, Ybeth, because there has been bipartisan support for Medicaid expansion. In fact, Representative Dr. Rudman has filed legislation. He has been talking about Medicaid expansion. And yet today the Senate President said that Florida will not expand Medicaid. She almost said it proudly. So I think it's really important that we continue to push the bipartisan support for this issue. It's going to be transformational for families. We can't let politics get in the way.
Okay, and lastly, as we wrap it up, Mayor of Orlando, when will you be telling us that you are running?
That's a great question. So I have one more election for the State House, and then following 2024, I'm going to be seriously considering all of my options. There will be an Opens Mayor race in 2027 for the City Beautiful, and I am seriously considering running for it.